Well, welcome, team. We've got some familiar faces. I don't think we've all been here together, though. We've got Randy Thomas, David Pereira, Camille Nairn, and Christopher Ward. At least that's the order they are on my screen, but who knows how they are elsewhere. So we're continuing now. We're actually looking at kind of wrapping up this look at the kingdom parables. In our rest stop, we've been taking times to reflect on what Jesus had to say about the kingdom, and with the possibility of it helping us think about life, think about ourselves, think about dealing in a world that's a combination of him being at work and yet still being unredeemed and difficult. So we're coming to some invitations now that Jesus gives that I think will help us then respond to the kingdom. As we've gone through these parables, what stood out to any of you about the kingdom? What kind of descriptions would you give to it? Things you've learned or have impressed you about the kingdom?
Well, to me, it seems like the kingdom is hard to really wrap your hand around or your mind around.
Okay.
It seems like the tighter you squeeze onto it, you think you figured it out. It's when you realize, no, I don't have it figured out.
Yeah.
So you read one parable, it's like, okay, I think I understand the kingdom. You read the next one, and you leave scratching your head a little bit, and you're wondering, why that one? I'm not sure if I like that so much. So,
Yeah, I don't understand it, and if I do, I'm not so sure I like it.
yeah.
That's
Well,
a good. Go ahead.
but isn't that the way it is in kingdoms? We aren't the king, so as a result, there are going to be things that we don't appreciate or don't want because we're not making the rules.
Yeah.
And we don't have much control over it as much as we would like.
And ultimately, that's a good thing,
I suppose.
So the kingdom comes, and guess what? The king is the king. So
Yeah.
he's in charge. That's a good observation, though, Christopher, too. That we can grab maybe one story, but then he gives us more. He gives us quite a few stories. There's a lot of teaching about the kingdom. So my guess is that means there's a lot to learn. They would have to give that many different stories.
Yeah, and there seems to be similar elements in them. He uses lots of things that grow and nature and food and
Yeah,
those types of object lessons. So
yeah. So that's a good thing about parables is they've got those earthly elements that help us to relate to them and understand them, to relay to us then things that we're not familiar with. So it's almost like with him using parables and having so many, it's really communicating we've got a lot of very different things to learn and to grasp. So my guess is it's no surprise that this stretches us. Even the disciples said, "Hey, what's up with this weeds and wheat thing?" Like, what is this about? Okay, so anything in particular about the kingdom that you are enjoying before we anything that you find yourself excited about or really resonating with that you like? Or
I like that it seems to be all about growing, expanding. All the metaphors, or a lot of the metaphors, are about these things growing. The mustard seed, the yeast, which allows the bread to rise, and
Yeah.
Even if there are weeds growing, it's still like there's still growth, you know. I like those things. Because so easy we get in the mindset of just maintenance mode, pretty stagnant, and we forget about the kingdom is about growth.
Wow.
So I like that.
That's great.
Well, I kind of like that, this is the king talking about his kingdom and giving it to us in a relatable way, just like Christopher explained. That's, it's something I can relate to. I understand that. And this, heavenly king knew that this is the type of thing that we can relate to. We can understand this. So that's what I like.
Yeah. Anything with you, Randy, that really resonates or gets you excited about the kingdom?
I've been struck in general about how challenging it would be to try to communicate the heart of God to us. And so all of this is a metaphor for trying to describe what does the reign of God actually look like in someone's life. Again, you can think about going to a foreign country and trying to come back and explain to people what you saw. You could say to someone, well, in our family, our household, our little kingdom, this is the way we do things. And even then, people are going to look at you like, what? How do you do it? And why do you do that? And so you multiply that out, and I'm amazed at the communicator that Jesus is, and how he layers it upon us, so that he's giving us a little bit, and we can chew on that, and then how we can chew on this, and we can chew on this, and he's unveiling this beautiful picture of what the reign of God in the heart of people actually looks like.
Yeah, so it seems like from the variety and the amount of parables, it is a complex,
very
deep subject. And yet the good news is that it's good news. Whatever this kingdom is, Jesus comes and says that the good news, repent and believe the good news, the kingdom of God's at hand. There's a message of hope. There's actually growth, even. And you can miss it, just like a mustard seed. You can miss it. It starts small, but it's going to grow. It's going to be big and comprehensive. Something you wouldn't even look at could be the home for birds. Mustard seed could grow into a shelter. So there's good news there to it. And yet it does stretch us. It's a bit of a how do I wrap my head around this? Well, there's, along with this growing and seed stuff, there's a couple of parables in Matthew 13. One kind of starts off that chapter. It's called the parable of the sower. You find out that Jesus taught many things in parables, and here he starts off about a farmer sowing his seed. Camille, would you like to read those verses for us?
Sure.
3 through 9, please.
Sure. It says, then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear.
Okay. So there you got it. Farmer goes out to sow seed in his field. At that point, maybe some of the hearers were thinking, oh yeah, we know all about that. What are you talking about? But as he goes on, gets a little more complicated. All kinds of things going on here. What first strikes you about this story? Seems to start off simple.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like the seeds that come up and get choked out or die, and I don't like that part of the story.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So you
hard to understand exactly why that has to be that way.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Yes.
I don't know. I grew up on a farm, and this seems pretty typical of what would actually happen.
Okay.
When a farmer is planting his crop, obviously he wants most of his seed to fall within the tilled regions of what he has plowed and prepared, but some of that seed is going to hit places where it's not meant to go. So again, I just find it very relatable. That makes sense to me. That seed would do this.
Okay, so we can understand it. Camille's not surprised by it, but Christopher is bugged by it. And here again, for a message of good news, we've got 4 seeds, and 3 of them aren't really happy endings.
Oh.
Well,
maybe that's what it is.
yeah. I guess we all know that it relates to the hearers and their response to the good news, right? So in a sense that it's not surprising, the human nature isn't surprising either, right? So good news is going to fall onto people different ways. So.
Yeah, it seems like that's what Jesus wants to get across there. Because thankfully we get an explanation at verse 18. I love these times when he actually nails it down for us, although it doesn't make it all that any more pleasant. Okay, what we find out is that there's 4 different responses. Someone can hear the message, and then the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown, because that person did not understand it. So if they hear it but don't understand it, the seed can be taken away. That's the seed along the path. But then the other one, the seed that fell on the rocky places, represents the man who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since he has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. The one who received the seed and fell among the thorns is the man who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. But after 3 bad examples, we have this good news that the one who received the seed that fell on good soil is the man who hears the word and understands it. Hears it and understands it. He produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. So after 3 not so good pictures, we do see where it kind of works like it's supposed to. What are the enemies briefly in those first 3 scenarios, though? What are the barriers, the problems? They keep the seed from doing what it should, what we'd like it to do.
Seems like the first one is not understanding, I guess, okay. I mean, then it mentions the evil one comes and takes it away. So I guess you could say the evil one is the enemy, but without understanding, or with understanding, I think you could argue that maybe it would be a different outcome.
Okay. So a failure to really grasp it.
Yeah.
There, and boom, it's like Nothing happened.
Right.
Okay. How about the next one? What's the barrier there?
No deep roots.
Right.
So,
Mm.
so they start off well, but then
Hmm.
get scorched. They can't handle it when it gets hot.
So the first one's like not received at all. Second one's not received deeply enough. And then
Yep.
the problem is trouble, right? Difficulty
Yeah.
and persecution. It's not deep enough to handle opposition. Okay. How about the third one, Camille? What?
Yeah. So going after things that are not of God, whether it's materialistic or just not in the truth. So.
Okay. So some fail to hear it, some fail to receive it deeply and genuinely enough to withstand difficulties. And others don't receive it in a way that's strong enough to fight off the other distractions. The worries and deceitfulness of wealth. So it's worries and prosperity. Choke it out.
Or the lure of prosperity.
Yeah.
They may not ever find it, but it's the draw.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's that deceitfulness is very important. It's that false claim that it makes. If you just had this, you'd be happy. So fail to receive, fail to bring deep, or get distracted by something else, and all of a sudden, all this seed doesn't do anything.
I think one of the hard responses on my end is to, I know that I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior, but I know there's times in my life where I can kind of look at those responses and say, I kind of responded that way in all of those various situations at different parts. I know that I've heard certain teaching and not had a crop yielding where it's kind of fell dead on my ears. I think that's kind of the reality when I read it to me.
Yeah, because when we first hear the story, it's like, well, the seed should grow, and that's what we're sowing it for. And yet, when we listen to this, you're like, wow, that is really true to life.
So and maybe you guys can clarify this, but I'm not sure that this is really talking about the Christian life and Christian growth versus the response to the actual gospel. Is there a difference here?
He is saying it's the message about the kingdom. So it is the big picture is the way I first take it. The big picture proclamation that Jesus is the coming king, the king who's come to usher in his kingdom. And it comes in a way that isn't what we expected. It comes quietly, and it doesn't destroy evil like we thought it would. It doesn't obliterate evil, which is what is so important about the weeds and the weed. But it's still a message that's got to be received. And there's all kinds of receptions to it. Some don't grasp it at all. Some it looks like they do, and it's really not deep enough. So how does this hit you as you see this portrayal? Christopher's still mad about it, I think.
Yeah, it's not a science. Sharing the good news with people, doesn't seem to be. In a way, it seems like it's a formula. It's a formula if the soil is right, But at the same time, you're not the ones scattering the seed. There's no indication they're the one doing anything with the soil. You know, they're not. Their job is just to scatter the seed. And one thing I don't, this is on a side point, one thing I don't like about the picture of scattering seed, it seems very cavalier. You know, I guess that's another thing that I really like. It's just, it seems like, we'll hope this sticks, you know, but I know that's not the intent, but yeah, it's not a science, and it seems like just as how it's a mystery how these things grow from something so small to so big. You know, the king of this kingdom is doing is more in charge than what we think when it comes to the growth of his kingdom. I think, and um, that's relieving to me, I guess, knowing that we're not responsible somehow to make this happen all on our own. There's someone behind the scenes that plays a enormous part in it.
Wow. So when you say not a science, I hear you saying it's not an engineered mechanical process. In other words, it's not something I can just make this presentation and people should respond, just like I can plant the seed and it will grow. And
Right.
Jesus says, actually, the kingdom is like, it's scattering. And, you know, I think that scattering is a good picture. I know it kind of bothers us when we say we should be distributing it. We should be inserting it in a calculated way. But this is a picture of
Find the good soil and just put it in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not to be soil inspectors. Right?
Yeah.
We're sowing.
It's not a mechanical thing. Yeah. Go ahead, Randy.
Oh, I was just gonna say we're that's our job. We're sowing,
Yeah.
and then the interesting thing to me is that the God does not force a crop. He allows the seed. In essence, each person gets to decide how am I going to respond to this. And he's just saying, yep, some people are going to do this, some people are going to do this, some people, and that's their choice. And we are to we just sow. And then you don't see God hitting the panic button or, you know, saying, oh, you know, let's call in the harvesters and, you know, let's just replant this seed, you know, let's keep doing all this over and over and over again. And you don't see that. You see the sowers are out there sowing, and then the seed responds, and God is going to take care of that seed. So it is an interesting parable in many ways.
Your responses is really everywhere, more than what is going to grow knowingly, and wants us to know that he knows there's going to be different receptions. And he's not going to come back and mechanically insert it. You will grow.
No. Yeah, he's not surprised. He's telling us ahead of time.
Yeah.
So don't be discouraged.
Yeah. And it's obviously something he knows. He's not doing it for his own sake. He's saying, here's what the kingdom's like. It's like a farmer who's got a plan, and he's got some seed. But he's freely scattering, fully knowing that not everything's going to come to fruition. But the hope is some would hear. That some would receive and produce a fruitful crop. 30, 60, 100 times what was sown. He who has ears, let him hear. Here he is talking about a parable saying, are you hearing? Are you hearing about hearing? Are you hearing about receiving? Well, good. he concluded some teaching about this reception. Then later in chapter 13, two really short parables that kind of go together. Randy, why don't you read us the treasure there in verse 44?
Okay. Do you want me to read 45 too, or just 44?
I'll have Christopher do that one since he.
Okay, good. All right. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. In his excitement, he hid it again and sold everything he owned to get enough money to buy the field.
Okay. And then he says again, what have you got there, Christopher, in 45 and 46?
Yeah. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it.
Two really short stories about how people respond to the kingdom. So we had this about the initial sowing. Now we've got two pictures of hearing the message. Kingdom of heaven's like treasure hidden in a field, or like a merchant looking for fine pearls. What are the similarities between these two? He kind of couples them together. It's like he mentions the one is like, I'm not even going to stop there. I'm going to mention the other. It's like a treasure. It's like a pearl of great price. What similarities do you see?
Yeah, there's some monetary, there's a monetary value or response.
Okay.
Selling all that he had and going and buying the field, or buying the fine pearls. So
Okay.
there's this response that is contrasted to the other, just growing, where or the response to the gospel is that there's growth. This is this is more action oriented, I guess.
Okay. So there's a definite, obvious, extravagant response to something of great value. Anything else you see there?
Well, it was with an attitude of joy.
Oh.
They did this with that type of an attitude. I'm not just, oh man, I'm just going to go do this. It's, this exuberant joy of doing it.
Yeah, that's great. So he's seeing something and joyfully then responding in a huge way. So what's behind the joy? What brings the joy and what brings the response? What does there have to be for this to happen?
Well, the discovery brings the joy. It's the, oh, look at this. I can't believe I found this. And then the value of what they have found outweighs everything else that they own. And so they are joyfully, thinking, this is the best deal ever. I can't pass this up. I've got to go get this, right now I've got to go get it. I need to sell everything so I can get this pearl or buy this field that has a treasure in it. Yeah.
So the discovery of something of great value that is worth everything I've got. And there's no hesitancy. There's not even, I don't know. The house too, the car, not my Nikes. No, it's, I see this and it's worth everything I have. And that joy, I love it. Oh, that's so good. The joy of what I've discovered. So why two stories? What's the difference? What's one say that the other doesn't?
Putting us on the spot here.
Well, I think one thing, I don't know if this is what you're trying to pull out, but
That means whatever you
the field, the item is hidden in the field versus the merchant is actually looking for fine pearls. So perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah. We know the merchant's definitely looking.
Yeah.
Right. We have no indication of any search of the treasure, and it's hidden in the field.
Yeah. So
It's
maybe
not-
I guess something like, a treasure hidden, and the kind of the response to the gospel for someone who's just never heard it before, and that discovery, whoa, something completely hidden to me is now alive and real, versus some people are searching out truth and find it, versus that, just a little bit different of a response to it. I don't know.
That's good.
Does that resonate with you guys?
It does. It does. What puzzles me a little bit is, why is it hidden, or why do we have to search for it? If this is such a great treasure, why doesn't God just make it so evident that we all go, oh, well, of course, it's obvious.
Yeah, that's good. I don't know that it speaks to that, but definitely emphasizes whether you stumble on it or are searching for it. When you see it,
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
Well, if I can play devil's advocate with my own question, in many ways, this is the same reason why Jesus is speaking in parables. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, the kingdom where you accept God's rule is a choice that we have to make. And so if it's just so obvious, then it takes away the choice. And so we fall in love. We see who he is, and we bow before him because we recognize this is worth everything, and he's already given everything for us. And so that's a personal decision that we make based on our walk with him. And if it was just automatic, then it wouldn't mean anything. It would be frivolous.
Yeah. So we look at all these parables, we have to engage, right? He tells us, do you have ears?
Yeah.
Do you see? Are you hearing?
Yeah.
It's kind of, you can, maybe stumble on this, whether you stumble on it or have been searching for it. Do you see it? Do you see the message? Do you see the value? Do you see the value in comparison to all that you are and have? Well, good. How would you like to summarize what you've seen through all the kingdom stuff and here? What's anything stand out to you that you're appreciating about the good news of the kingdom through all this? Leave it wide open.
Well, I would have to respond by saying, we see the beauty of the kingdom. We see him trying to describe the kingdom, but we also need to remember the kingdom is a gift that he gives to everyone, that all of us can be citizens or participants of this kingdom. And that's one of the most beautiful things. As much as he's describing, and I wouldn't say Jesus is struggling, but I think we're struggling to understand, because it's so different. It's so countercultural. And so as we begin to understand the different layers that are involved, the most beautiful thing is it's a gift that is given to us, that he is bringing the kingdom to us and allows us to enter into it, not because of our own merit, not because we get it, not because we understand it, but because he's providing it. And that is the greatest to me thing about the kingdom, is that its citizenship is free, and we can all be citizens of that kingdom. It came at an awful price, but it's a price that has been paid for us.
Yeah. How about you, Camille? What do you appreciate about the king or the kingdom here?
Well, I think two things really. One, what strikes me the most of the whole big picture here is the individual response to the good news. This is about what are you going to do with this truth that's been laid out for you. And then just sort of relating back to what I was kind of getting at earlier in our discussion, and Jesus speaking in parables, and why did he choose over time to present these mysteries to people to this way to us. And it is that whole kingdom thinking. It's not just our culture that transcends just America. We're looking at Christians and cultures all over the globe, and they can relate to the same story.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just find that really cool.
Wow. It's come to include everybody, to speak in a story that reaches everybody.
Yeah.
How about you, Christopher? What anything you're liking, despite the?
I liked how we ended on the last couple parables there, of the treasure and the value in it, because that's where I think this, at the end of the day, that's what, when I walk away, that's what is going to get me excited. And I think that's what I learn from most of all this is not so much of the questions of, oh, why does he talk this way, or why those seeds, why can't we all, all those difficult questions we wrestle with. It's if I have stumbled upon this treasure, what value does it have to me, and am I responding like in a way that reflects its value? So that's what I'm convicted about, and the joy that really should be dwelling on when you look at it, that we are citizens of this kingdom, like Randy said, and that's the good news about the kingdom. So.
Wow, that's a great summary, and that really kind of wraps this whole thing up really well, because it's like Jesus tells us there's trouble, there's going to be weeds and wheat, and there's going to be different receptions out in this other field, but at the end of the day, it's like finally finding the pearl, or maybe just stumbling on some treasure. And what strikes me about the treasure is you don't expect it to be there. It's almost, I think, a double take. It's like, wait a minute, there's treasure in this field. I wasn't even looking for it, but that is what it is. And we've got to recognize it, got to have the eyes to see it, to then say, I'm cashing out. I got to get that field. What great joy. Let's close and just thank the Lord for that. Lord, your teaching stretches us and perplexes us, but it blesses us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming and speaking in a way that reaches us, and for leaving us with a good news message that we can find the treasure of the kingdom, and it's worth everything we've got. Thanks for that encouragement, the time we could share. Amen. Well, thank you guys. Dang, it's always a crazy adventure to plunge into uncharted waters, but I love what we can see together.
Fun stuff.
Okay, well,
All right.
Thank you.
We're not going to.
Blessings.
Thanks.
All right.
See y'all later.
Take care.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.